What's a good word, y'all? DKB here. So, offensive line coach John Benton, he's given us some words of encouragement and ensurement that he still thinks the offensive line can perform the way we predicted earlier this season, which is that we potentially could have a top 10 unit in the NFL for the first time since our playoff teams, essentially. And even then, keep in mind, we were really probably um, just above middle tier, depending on the year and kind of what was happening with injuries. But nonetheless, it's it's assuring to hear because there's been a lot more movement and everything's completely different from the original plan. We walked into the season knowing that we needed a backup swing tackle. We knew we needed to ensure that the guard depth was better. Based on the way the current roster has been constructed, we are definitely much stronger on the interior than we necessarily were on the bookend tackle side. Not the production, the potential was definitely there, and I think we've seen some pretty big flashes of excellent play from Mekhi Becton. We've seen it from George Fant, not only on the left side where he did have his career year, but even on the right side, even though he doesn't perform necessarily as well, the strength of this offensive scheme and what we ask our offensive linemen to do definitely still matches up with his physical profile. And so, outside of the swing tackle, outside of ensuring that the guard depth, potentially center, was better, um, we were definitely expecting a top 10 year out of this team. We still are expecting very big things out of our running backs. It's been great to see Brees Hall, shooting off for 75-yard touchdowns in joint practices. Um, but in regards to the O line, again, the original plan is much different from what actually is occurring, just over 3 weeks until the season starts. So, Mekhi Becton, season ending injury. He's no longer expected to be one of our tackles, which the offensive line, or at least the left tackle, competition was ended extremely early to make sure that the chemistry can be built early on. Um, and then we know George Fant, who ended up winning that left tackle position, he ends up losing his job to one of his former partners in crime in Dwayne Brown, who we bring in originally trying to work out a swing tackle deal, and he actually ends up walking in as a starter to make sure that we can still fully live up to expectations, which leaves us in the same predicament. What's our backup tackle situation? People were excited to hear the news that Max Mitchell was ahead of the developmental curve that they may have expected. The first preseason game didn't necessarily go his way well, but I don't think that changes anything in regards to what we've heard about him. We all knew that the biggest focal point and area of opportunity for him in year one was going to be building up his core strength. You can see it on any scouting report. You can see it not necessarily on game tape, but when you see some of the practice highlights and things. And he's mentioned it as much in press conferences. And he's taken away valuable experience with one of the best defensive lines, battling them day in and day out that we've had all the way down to our third stringers. So I definitely expect him to continue excelling in his development. But you know, Dwayne Brown comes in as our new left tackle. Lakin Tomlinson ends up forcing a switch for Elijah Vera-Tucker to right guard. But the moves make sense. Dwayne Brown purely being a left tackle. I think I've been saying that he's never played snaps at right tackle, but I want to say Samini posted something saying that he's actually had 4 snaps, which I would assume was maybe in some kind of special package. Um, but either way, regardless, he's essentially a pure left tackle. Same thing for Lakin Tomlinson at the left guard spot. Connor McGovern, nobody's really necessarily concerned one way or the other with him. We're just hoping he continues to improve and excel. And then Elijah Vera-Tucker makes a switch to right guard. Mekhi Becton, we were hoping to groom with Vera-Tucker on the right side. He goes down, and so now George Fant is switching back over because he's the most versatile piece outside of Elijah Vera-Tucker that we have on the offensive line. So I still think the potential's there with Dwayne Brown and what he's accomplished in his career, and even in recent memory, what he's been able to do. He still has proven that he can be essentially a top 10 to top 15 tackle in the NFL. George Fant, if he can kind of replicate what he's been able to do at left tackle on the right side, he should still be able to earn himself a big payday. And then Elijah Vera-Tucker, Laken Tomlinson's had no shortage of rave reviews for what the kid has been able to do so far. And it seems like he's definitely improved. The run blocking can still be um, improved a little bit, but again, we're still working him out on a new position on this offensive line. And while he's had the experience, again, while people are trying to essentially master a position and you're doing switches, it makes that a little bit more difficult. But either way, from John Benton's perspective, he's essentially mentioned he's been putting us in more game situations for the certain kind of run coverages and pass blocking sets that we want to do. I'm assuming that's been the same situation during joint practices so far, and we've seen it working to a high effect so far. So between having a more veteran presence on the line and kind of having these guys that'll still be waiting in the wings for next year, like Mekhi Becton that we're hoping for a big push from. Maybe Nate Herbig still continues to come out and impress. Some of the new guys that we picked up, Caleb I want to say is Benanak. He actually had one of the highest scores in our first preseason game and graded out as one of our best, if not the best, offensive linemen throughout that entire process. And he played the most amount of snaps just outside of Max Mitchell. So things like that have been very encouraging. We'll see what ultimately ends up happening, but I'm still pretty confident that we should be able to produce, I would probably say, a top 14 offensive line by the time things are said and done, as long as injuries don't necessarily take the toll on us. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Do you have the same confidence that John Becton has in being able to see this offensive line produce the way we're expecting it to, or are you expecting there to be some leaks that maybe spring early and some signs of worry that are out there? Either way, drop it in the comments, let me know, and I'll catch you guys again. Peace.